我们坚信，对话一有对立，理解胜于误解，和谐带来和平，合作促进创新。最后，我预祝本次大会圆满成功。
I'm very glad and impressed by the very concept of this society. What we need in the modern world is dialogue. Different civilizations, different cultural traditions are coming to the fore, and they are meeting now on a global level.
Our Congress coincides with the 20th anniversary of the establishment of the ISUD. It was founded in November of 1989 in Poland, the same weekend that the Berlin Wall came down.
So this is where it started, right?
Yes. I remember the election, for example, of the first board. I had been elected already at this time president of the society.
International Society for Universalism, as it was then called, brought together philosophers of the East and West to dismantle the wall of mistrust and intolerance that had separated both sides during the Cold War confrontation. This is equally important, while more difficult in today's world situation.
I think here is the assemblage of global people, and this, though it is in Beijing at China, but I think it's a whole globe.
This conference opened my mind.
The theme of the Congress is dialogue among cultures, peace, justice, and harmony, which is an issue of widespread public attention in the contemporary world.
If the dialogue is a form of our discourse, its content consists of the themes of universal concern, such as freedom and justice, war and peace, underdevelopment, ecological crisis, and other social and global problems. The philosophical approach to these problems is reflected in the themes of our congresses, as well as in the publications of the papers, which are the final materialized product of our scholarly activities. The most recent 7th Congress in Hiroshima produced Between Global Violence and the Ethics of Peace, published by Blackwell, Philosophy After Hiroshima, by Cambridge Scholars Publishers. Dialogue and Peace in a Culturally Diverse World has been published by Skepsis.
And as far as this conference is concerned, I personally think it is quite successful in a number of ways. And firstly, when we were choosing this conference theme, I personally made a particular reference to the social context. Our participants came along to this conference from different parts of the world. They contributed different ideas, different arguments, and different strategies.
Now we have religious fundamentalists in the Islamic world with religious fundamentalists in the Christian, and they will collide sooner or later, and we have to find a way to avoid that. Well, one way is to cultivate philosophical thinking and try to tell the people that there are common values which philosophers of different ages and different cultures share.
Thanks to our keynote speakers, Professors Rushin, William McBride, and Enrique Dussel, for honoring us with your philosophical input.
Philosophy is needed more than ever, given the worldwide sense of, maybe the word dépaysement, French word, works, sort of sense of lack of one's country. And the problem is there's a dépaysement global, there's a kind of global sense of a kind of loss of where we are.
The Eurocentrism is accepted in all the world, and too in the peoples where this type of visions put these peoples out of history. Because Latin American, for example, is not important in the Hegelian vision.
As a Chinese scholar, I would like to offer my own opinion, proceeding from the idea of harmony in diversity or harmony with differences. Ideas of the harmony in diversities is certainly originated in the ancient Chinese philosophy. I know Professor Huntington. I respect him very much. But we cannot agree with his ideas. That clash is unavoidable.
I'm interested in human rights, and human rights is a product of philosophy.
Since I'm a social and political philosopher above all, I've always had an interest in questions about justice. We philosophers ought to start thinking more in terms of concentrating on major instances of injustices, and rather than, in other words, shift from a theory of justice to theories of injustices. More or less 2/3 of the paper, or large parts of it, was to precisely to say that this era of the hegemony of a certain kind of Western liberal democratic theory is over. It's most important to precisely pay great heed to the previous gentleman's comments about bringing in people from other traditions and perspectives from other traditions, and encouraging those perspectives to sort of stand up against this previously hegemonic Western liberal democratic perspective.
It's necessary to begin to do a new vision of history, but especially Africa and Latin America, they must discover their position in the world history.
Eurocentrism presents many problems to the actual understanding and universalization of human rights in the contemporary era. Unless we understand the theories, Eurocentric theories that preceded the contemporary era, will not be able to engage in a fruitful cross-cultural dialogue.
Our participants argued with each other very critically and constructively. They always try to share something, to look for something that would be healthy and constructive.
We should be careful, the parallels and the analogies are different.
We have this idea that if two cultures are having a disagreement with each other, there must be a right way of thinking and a wrong way of thinking about these issues. But instead of having this kind of approach, why don't we look at possibilities for integration? Why don't we try to take what is best in each of these two cultural traditions and try to integrate them in some way?
Dialogue, on my view, is essentially revisionist discourse. It's discourse with another, and one has to be prepared and open to change one's own position.
It is to ask for the true causes and the reasons of things. The why, not the what is, the why. Why is it that?
You can see that in Beijing, those who drive the tax will never have the tax. Those who build the houses will never leave those houses. You know, that is the social structure. There's no expectation, no hope.
I have a problem. Suppose, should we adopt a custom that seems to be foolish, or should we accept an unjust law?
There are so many meanings of integration, you have rightly shown. But when we tell the man is a man of integrity, there lies a separate meaning. What type of meaning you will assign to that?
I don't know why it's necessary to have an absolute theological ground for human rights.
Our habitat is inelastic in ways that our culture, on the other hand, is not. We are elastic.
We don't know the absolute truths about things. And so if we understand that better, then we can talk to each other more humbly. We can be more respectful to the other.
I see myself in the other as a mirror, for whom I am also a mirror. Bakhtin suggested that the essence of a given culture may be better understood from the viewpoint of another foreign culture than from its own inner perspective.
We have arranged 2 cultural tours. One was to the Forbidden City or the Palace Museum. The other was to the Great Wall and the Ming tombs.
All the tombs here. There's a Tianzhou mountain. The emperor thought that the land not great.
We think very much in the Roman Empire, as a big empire, foundational empire of Europe, but this is bigger than the Roman Empire. It's tough. Hey.
Bravo.
Oh, there.
Here I have given a paper on the distinction between right and duty.
The title of my paper is The Development of National Culture in a Diverse World.
The paper contributed to this Congress is about Taoism and ecology.
Harmony in Taoism, inspiration to ecological ethics.
In the presentation, I mainly talk about one notion of Confucius, that is Tao.
I have presented a paper on Gandhi's contribution to nonviolence and global peace.
And if these ideas just are transformed into practical entities, they could work great wonders.
Yes, the role of imagination is very important, and indeed, most specifically, the idea of utopian thinking, has a place.
And through the use of imagination, maybe we can resolve some of these conflicts and problems. And I think that this is the International Society for Universal Dialogue is a place where we can do that.
I think by this kind of dialogue, we can enrich our own culture and also open more windows for us to see the real world.
So sometimes we have to investigate the relationship between different cultures. So I think it's necessary for us to sit down quietly, to think and to talk.
The idea of universal dialogue, I suppose, in some ways, to the extent that you assume that the society itself is not trying to bring about its own demise, you assume that dialogue will have to continue endlessly.
What we need to realize is that the world cannot become a monolithic environment. Diversity is inevitable, and this society encourages intercultural dialogue, and I'm proud to be a member.
So first of all, let me congratulate newly elected board and wish you all the best to continue this high level of performance we reached at this point and make it even better. And see you in 2 years in the next Congress.